Hi there, I'm Pekamo the Haze Mechanic. Today I'll be taking you through another diagnostic and repair video. We'll be looking into a Toyota Matrix 2005. The owner complained that the car randomly stalls on him when driving, and also that at some point in time, I think about 4 occurrences have happened when the car will not start again, and he will need to ask a good Samaritan to lend him a battery to put it up running again. But every time they give him a good battery, the car starts again. It looks like a bad battery or a bad starter motor. But I remember there was this certain time when he called me to come and take a look at it. He had just finished buying fuel in the filling station, and he was about leaving when he attempted to start the engine, and the engine would not start. So he gave me a call, and by the time I got there, I tried to observe trying to start the engine, and I discovered that there was actually a crank, but no start, but the crank was weak. So that led me to a possible bad battery. I replaced the battery with the battery in my car, and it started right away. But immediately I pulled out the battery negative terminal, the engine shut off. This led me to asking him to bring the car down to the workshop so that we can take a closer inspection on it and assess whatever is happening, because I was having a big hunch that it's likely the charging system is failing. Another registered symptom from the owner was that on the instrument cluster, it glows the battery warning light at some point, which comes on or goes off at some interval. And this happens when the engine is running, so that indicates a charging system failure. When you're driving on the street or on the highway, or maybe your car is just sitting idling with your engine running, and you discover that your battery warning light illuminates your instrument cluster, it suggests that you have a charging system failure. This failure can be caused by different things. One of the things that can cause that illumination of the battery warning light is when your alternator belt snaps off. And sometimes it does not snap off, it just has a weaker tension, of which it will cause the alternator not to be driven by the crankshaft pulley. When it snaps off completely, then the alternator is not driven at all. But when it has a weak tension, then in that case, the alternator is being driven, but intermittently it's going to sleep. When you have a sleep condition, you're likely to have the warning light come on and off on the instrument cluster, and in that case, it means you're having intermittent charging. So at some point it's going to charge, and at some point it's not going to charge. If it snaps up completely, then at that point, your alternator is not going to charge at all. Another thing that can cause the instrument cluster to illuminate the battery warning light is when you have the fuse for the alternator blown out. In that case, you just have to replace the fuse and you'll be good. Another thing that can make your battery warning light illuminate on your instrument cluster is if your alternator is bad. If your alternator is completely gone, then it means your battery is not going to charge. You might still be driving on the road with that warning light illuminating, but bear in mind that it's just for a while. In a very soon time, you're going to drain out the battery charge on your car, and the car, the engine and every other accessories you are using, which has been relying on the power that has been stored in the battery, will eventually run out of that charge because the alternator is not there to replenish it, and you're just going to be stranded. So what should you do if you're driving on the road and you eventually see that warning light, the battery warning light, pop up on your instrument cluster? What you should do is to find a safe place to pull over and park and seek for help. But if you're a DIYer and you know your way around things, or you have a couple of tools around, it will be good for you to do these few tests. Let's start from the simple to the little advanced. If you have a wheel spanner in your car, you can, or maybe a long metal, you can look for a way to safely place that bar or that metal in front of your pulley. Make sure it's not aluminum, make sure it's steel or iron, such that it can respond to magnetization. So you place that bar or that metal, make sure it's long enough for you not to be caught by the belt. Place that metal in front of the alternator pulley, and you try to see if you can get it close to the alternator pulley, and at that point, if it magnetizes. If the alternator pulley magnetizes that metal you put in front of the pulley, then you have an idea that that alternator is having a field charge. So now you will have to look for a multimeter to go ahead in an advanced stage of diagnosis. You get a multimeter and you set it to the voltage DC setting, one that is able to read about 15 volts. On some multimeters, you need maybe a 20 volt range DC or 60 volt range DC to read it. For those ones that have ranges, there are some that does not have range. You just put it to voltage DC and it's going to calibrate itself to the right range and get you the reading that is present. So you get your multimeter and set it to voltage DC to the right range, and you check the battery post of your car while the engine is running. You should be having more than 13 volts. If you are having about 12 volts or less, it indicates that your alternator is not charging your battery. And if you are having up to 13 volts and above, it indicates that your alternator is charging. But to confirm very well if your alternator is charging, then you can go ahead and put on some other accessories and see if it's going to reduce the voltage you're getting.